We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Welcome back to Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio America Network. I'm your host, Mark Angelides. Today we are very fortunate to be joined by Mr. Dave Patterson, the man who knows everything there is to know about national security and the like. And he's here to educate me, hopefully, on what's happening with, well, I guess what we'd call it a Middle East tinderbox, wouldn't we, Dave?
Yeah, I think so. I think that it is. And incidentally, happy to be on your show. Nice build up.
Great to have you here.
Appreciate that. Yeah, I think that we're looking at here is the potential for precisely what the Biden administration has railed against, which is an escalation of the violence and the hostilities, and yet they won't deal with the single biggest problem, and that's Iran.
Well, let's talk about that. So you did a fascinating piece on the pages of LibertyNation.com recently, where you discussed that Iran's issue seems to be that it's coming to a realization that it can't actually take on Israel in a direct conflict, as has been demonstrated by they sent 300 missiles and Israel sent one back and hit their target. And is that kind of giving them pause in terms of making direct or overt threats, and instead convincing them to ramp up the proxy fighters that surround Iran?
I think that what Iran can do is to motivate.
Let's not give them advice, right? Let's not.
Yeah,
give
right.
Them...
well, but in terms of their capability, but they will motivate Hezbollah, which has, as they say, 150,000 rockets, which is not nothing, as Donald Rumsfeld used to say. And of course, imagine that you have a coordinated Hezbollah, fanatical Palestinian West Bank, and the Hamas, what there is left of it, all coordinated in attacking Israel. Now, that would be, I think, a challenge for Israel, but not one that's insurmountable. I mean, they've shown that they're quite capable and adroit at taking on real military challenges. But what my point is that sending 300 ballistic missiles, drones, and cruise missiles clearly is they're not capable of making any sort of a significant impact. And it's primarily because, contrary to what people might think, I mean, their technology is just not that great. Their coordination, all of the kinds of the command and control, all those kinds of things that actually make for a successful attack, they're not very good at. But at the same time, you have to say what they cause is a great deal of uncertainty, and they're just a challenging problem. And the United States is not doing the right things in terms of challenging that, giving them as well, giving them back as good as we get. And there's this notion in the United States about proportionality, this concept of we do to you what you did to us. In other words, you send a rocket or a missile or a drone, or pick your favorite, and you strike us, we strike you with a drone and destroy a launch site. And you're seeing this play out in Yemen.
Yeah.
That is not what Clausewitz had in mind for proportionality.
Would you like to expand on that? What did he have in mind, do you think, then? Was it,
sure,
you do this,
sure,
and then we
I
destroy
just threw that out as
everything
a kind of a
own?
teaser. Yeah. Yeah, right. I mean, here's the point. You do mission for mission if you want proportionality. The Houthis, the terrorist Houthis in Yemen, their mission is to disrupt and stop commercial traffic in the Red Sea. That's what they're doing. We, on the other hand, are hitting them missile for missile. Well, our mission should be, if you're going to take a proportional point of view, our mission should be stopping the attacks totally. Now, Israel did a nice job of destroying the port in Sana'a. And what we should do is our mission should be stop the attacks. And the way you do that is you have a massive airborne attack, missiles, drones, aircraft dropping 2,000 pounders, and you eliminate headquarters, boats, ports, everything that could be used in an attack.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, because I'm not au fait with the current military jargon and terminology, but isn't that what we laymen might call an escalation?
No, it's called a mission for mission proportionality. You're destroying their capability to harass you. That's what you want to do. You don't want to irritate them. That's what we're doing. We're irritating them. And that to no avail, obviously, because the attacks continue. We're not persuasive.
So it seems to me then that the United States currently has a posture of, we want to be seen to be retaliating, but without actually affecting the outcome in any meaningful way. It's almost as though, and this thought occurs to me, it's the old sci-fi books and movies where a time traveler goes back in time, but they're not allowed to actually affect anything because such effect, breaking a twig in a forest or treading on a butterfly, if you will have serious repercussions out into the future. And that seems to me to be the State Department policy at the moment, is to act like time travelers, whereby they're merely witnessing and not trying to impact the final outcome. Is that a poor analogy?
No, I think it's fairly apt. I mean, first of all, that sort of thinking comes from, diplomatic fecklessness and cowardice. They think that all things can be solved in cocktail parties and where people come with a common goal and they sit down and they talk and they iron out their differences. That's totally ineffective because we're not dealing with a philosophy or a ideology that is something that is common to both of us, both the West and the East. It's just not. We're not dealing in the same realm, and by virtue of the fact of us not taking them on the way they would take us on, it puts us at a disadvantage. Reagan figured it out, and when we were having trouble in the Persian Gulf and the Straits of Hormuz, and the Iranians mined the Gulf of Hormuz, and one of our ships was seriously damaged. Reagan sunk their navy. They had half a navy the next day. That's what you have to do. It's just not. I don't understand why it is that, first of all, Iranian has submarines. They should all be at the bottom of the Gulf. This is ridiculous. And because once you influence and you convince the mullahs that whatever their goal was, it will never be achieved, because we can put everything that you have in terms of a military out of action, never to be seen again, by the way.
I think it's quite interesting that this piecemeal response, which may or may not be the right way to do it, but it does achieve one certain thing. It gives those that are operating against the US in many cases, and US allies in more cases, it gives them the idea that, look how long we can wage this war against the US and US allies. We must be doing something right. And that gives them a certain level of encouragement, confidence, and bravado that they wouldn't have under the, as you say, the proportionality response of, for example, Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think imagine this: the United States for years was the preeminent marketing and advertising nation. We invented advertising and marketing and we can't put messaging out that is successful to blunt the enemies. This is ridiculous, but we just don't have the will to do it. And to your point, all of this is not lost on the unaligned nations and those that would tend to roll in behind China and Iran, North Korea, and Russia. All of this stuff is not lost on them. And we're just out there flailing around. And we've now put a new, the Abraham Lincoln is going to be in the, along with an additional fighter squadron. And we already have the USS Wasp, which is an amphibious assault ship with the 24th Marines embarked. We have those there, but what are they there for? They're just defensive shoot down missiles. And okay, they shoot off missiles, we shoot them down. There is no end game. There's nothing achieved.
What we need then is Don Draper of Mad Men to come up with a coherent message for everybody. Dave Patterson, thanks ever so much for joining us.
Hey, thank you, Mark. Happy to be with you always.
And that's all we have time for on this week's edition of Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio America Network from our flagship station in the nation's capital, WWRC in Washington, D.C. I'd like to thank our guests today, and of course, thank you, the listeners at home, for taking the time to tune in and join us each and every week. Thanks for being here.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.